In the JSP, this lecture is all about JSP. We have understand how the JSP works through diagrammatic diagrams. JSP first of all request for the response, and that request is processed at the server side with the help of the servlet involved. Now, let's have a deep introduction of the JSP. JSP is a server-side technology that does not process thing at the server. That does all the processing at the server. Very important word. ये client का सब बोझा अपने सर से हटा देता है. It is used for creating dynamic web application using Java as programming language. It is used for creating a dynamic web application using Java as programming language. Basically, any HTML file can be converted to JSP file by just changing the file extension from .html to JSP. Wow. Okay, very important. It would run just fine. What differentiates JSP from HTML is the ability to use Java code inside the HTML. So there is nothing difference like any deep down difference between JSP and HTML. But in the HTML, we have a markup code. And when the markup code is extended with the .jsp, then that markup code has a when if the markup code within the markup code we have a Java program, it can be processed with the .jsp extension. In JSP, you can embed Java code in HTML using JSP tags. For example, run the code below. Every time you run this, it will display the current time. This is what makes the code dynamic. This is what makes the code dynamic. Like here we have an example. We have an HTML and body. Hello, beginner's book. Okay. Current time and we have a scriptlet. We have this script, this functionality to show the JSP. This Angular tag percentile equal to new java.utility date, and body is closed and the string is there. Now, because this is a Java thing, java.utility. If you just take an example, you just copy, open a notepad. JSP.html. Okay, we have this thing JSP.html. See what happens. Nothing is in the body is looking. We have a statement like presentation. Hello, beginner book reader. Current time. This command instructional command. Is that as a instructions in the markup language is taking as a print command. But when we save this file as .jsp, but we need environment obviously. See what happens. I haven't that environment. That next due to that extension, the page is saved different. Try to open, but this page is not getting an environment because their page will only open in the server side. It needs the server side configuration. Okay. I haven't had any server installed with this. Let's open say with this Visual Studio. Visual Studio is also not connected server side thing, but still let's see what happens. This is the one the editor. Okay. This editor. This editor is only giving a simple edit thing. We need to connect it with the server. That's two inside we got. One inside that .jsp extension is usually which is run around the server, and we need to a server for processing of our. Okay. Now, how the JSP will run? JSP will run like this. Let us start JSP with a simple JSP. HTML head, title, message head, bracket percentile out dot print the packet hello dot sample JSP code and that's the comma and percentile. And we have a body. like this. And the explanation of above code is Angular bracket percentile is JSP comment. Okay, represent the JSP element called JSP comment. Okay, this thing is known as the JSP comment. While adding comments to a JSP page, you can use this tag. We will discuss this in a detail. JSP comment must start at the end percentile, Angular bracket and percentile, and ends with this. Head title and body tags are HTML tags. They are HTML tags frequently used for static web pages. Whatever content they have is delivered to the client web browser as such. Okay. Head title and body tags are HTML tags. They are HTML tags frequently used for the web pages and the static web pages. And Angular bracket percentile out.println is a servlet element which is known as the scriptlet. The thing which is in this bracket is known as the scriptlet. And scriptlet can contain Java code. Syntax of the scriptlet is Angular bracket percentile executable Java code. As this code is scriptlets in Java statement, it must end with the colon dot println hello sample dot Java. Java statement which prints hello and which is the sample JSP code and which is end with this colon. We have this Java statement from here to here within a instruction. So in a Java instruction and it is end by here and within a scriptlets. Okay. JSP is used for creating dynamic web pages. And JSP can create a dynamic and static web page with the help of the include, where we can have two ways: directives and actions, what we have discussed. Okay. The static content can text-based information such as HTML and XML, etc. The dynamic content is generated by the JSP tag using Java code inside HTML. Okay. Servlet-based JSP. Like JSP, servlet are also used for generating dynamic web pages. Here is the comparisons between. The major difference between the servlet add HTML code inside Java. Servlet add HTML code inside Java. We first of all initialize the servlet with the servlet config and all. Then within the servlet config we have that HTML. Well, JSP adds Java code inside HTML. Okay. The simple representation is in servlet. This is Java code. Within that we have our HTML. Okay. This is for servlet. Okay. Now, in JSP, we have HTML code. Within that, we have our Java. This is sort of difference between Java and Java servlet and Java JSP. Now, this is noticeable difference. Now, some points are servlet in the Java program is support HTML tags too. Generally used for developing business layer, the complex computational code for an enterprise application. Okay. Servlets are created and maintained by Java developers. Okay. What is JSP? JSP program is HTML code which supports Java statements too. To be more precise, JSP embed Java and HTML using JSP tags. What we have seen. Angular bracket percentile, then Java code instruction by semicolon, then percentile, Angular bracket, that is known as scriptlets. Okay. Used for developing developing presentation layer of enterprise application. Frequently used for designing websites and used by web developers. Advantage of JSP. What are the advantages of JSP? JSP has all advantages of servlets, like better performance than CTI, built-in session features. It also inherits the features of Java technology like multi-threading, exceptions, and database connectivity, etc. JSP enables the separation of content generation from content presentation. Presentation while a part is taken care by the HTML, which makes it more flexible. With the JSP, it is not easy for the web designer to showcase the information what is web application programmers can concentrate on how to process build the information. This is what advantages of JSP is all about. Okay, programmer can focus on what is the architecture of a JSP. What really is the architecture of the JSP is, let's understand. So for any web development application, we should have a basic idea of architecture, how it is going to be done. So we have two models for the JSP. Okay, as we know that the request happens and then the response is taken care by the servlet or JSP. So in the model one, in this model, JSP plays a key role and the responsible for processing the request made by the client web browser, make a request. JSP then creates a bean object, which then fulfills the request and pass the response to JSP. JSP then creates a bean object, which then fulfills the request and pass the response to JSP. JSP then sends the response back to client. JSP then sends the response back to client. Unlike Model 2 architecture, in this model, most of the processing is done by JSP itself. So browser just requests the thing from a JSP, and the JSP responds in a way and it update the data. In the Model 2 architecture, servlet plays a major role and it is responsible for processing the client web browser request. And presentation part, GUI part will be handled by the JSP. So one part is like in the model 1 where JSP is directly handling the request. In the model 2, the presentation part is taken care of by the JSP. It is done with the help of the bean as shown in the image below. The servlet acts as a controller in charge of request processing. It creates the bean objects required by the JSP page and calls the respective JSP page. The JSP handles the presentation part by using the bean object. In this model, JSP does not do any processing. Servlet creates the bean object and calls the JSP program as per the request made by the client. Here, the request is go to servlet and JSP uses the V and is processed with the help of the bean and the database. Now, this is a simple introduction of the JSP, what we have. Right now, let's move ahead for the life cycle of the JSP. What is really the life cycle of JSP? How JSP process within the environment. So JSP pages are served with .jsp extensions, which lets the server know this is JSP page. Okay. An example, when I give a HTML page.jsp extension, that is what I'm thinking, and needs to go through JSP lifecycle. Okay. So when client makes a request to server, it goes to the container. The container checks whether the servlet code is older than JSP page to ensure the JSP file got notified. If this is case, then container does the translation again, convert the JSP to servlet. Otherwise, this is the translation phase. Translation web page is not modified, then it does not do the translation to improve the performance of this. It takes time, and to repeat this step every time is not a time. So following is the life cycle phases of the JSP. First of all, JSP will do the translation, then it will do the compilation, then it will do the loading, then it will do instantiation of the code, then it will initialize the server, then request is processed, then destruction will happen. So how it will done? This all 7 life cycle will be done within this 3 steps. We will request for the JSP service, which is initialized previously by the service. And service will perform its duty, then it will destroy itself of the response. Let's see the server, JSP lifecycle in more detail. First of all, whenever a container receives a request from client, it does translation only when servlet class is older than the JSP page. Otherwise, this skips this phase. Reason we have explained above. If the JSP class is older, then only you need this phase. Then we don't need this translation. Otherwise, we can directly go for it. Okay. The second, then the container compiles the corresponding servlet program, loads the corresponding servlet program. What is the thing is, loads the corresponding servlet class. Okay. Instantiate the servlet class. Calls the JSP init method to initialize the servlet instances. JSP container will do this job only where the instance of the servlet file is not running, or if the older than the JSP file. Okay. The existential thing within a servlet plays an important role in this, in the process of the compilation and the translation. Okay, like we have in this example, we have a public void JSP slice page. And code will slice the service instance from which the JSP method will execute. So a new thread is then get executed. What I have said, a JSP service method with a request, HTTP server request, and HTTP service response parameter, which is shown below. Void underscore JSP servlet request, HTTP server response. Code goes here, and finally, in the next step, we have a JSP destroy method to destroy the instances of the servlet class code, which look like the code public void JSP destroy code to remove the instance of the servlet class code. This is how the things get done in the step-by-step process of the servlet lifecycle. Now, this will give you a clear idea of how what is servlet, what is the life cycle of servlet, and we think there is an Eclipse IDE from IBM. How the servlet will run in that? You know, how the servlet will run? As per in the example in the previous lecture, we have seen that if we save our file as a .jsp, we need a servlet to run. Why it need a servlet to run? This is explained in this JSP. So how to run a JSP in Eclipse IDE using Apache Tomcat server. So whatever IDE will be there. I have Node++, but I need that Apache Tomcat server. Okay, this tutorial will create a simple JSP file and run it on the Eclipse IDE using Apache Tomcat server. In order to run JSP in Eclipse IDE, you need to have Apache Tomcat server configured to the Eclipse IDE. Okay. So we will open the Eclipse and then click on File New, and then we click on New Project. And we will go for the dynamic web page then project. Then we'll select the wizard as per me. We will select the wizard, dynamic web project, and in the dynamic web project we will go the given name, give the tools, and whatever configuration we want. Dynamic which model we want to put, what is the default configuration. Okay. Now the thing is no one like this. Now the thing is what is really the JSP is all about. Write some JSP code we have. Servlet JSP step 5. So this way we used to configure the file and servers for the JSP, and finally when we got that, then our JSP program will run. So in the next lecture, we will run how we will think how the JSP code will be there. The JSP code will be there and how. So thank you for your patience, and in the next lecture we'll go for the declaration tag and expression tag. And in detail we understand about the scriptless directives, include and parameteric exception and all. Okay, I think you hope you have some understanding of the JSP. Then in the next lecture you have a clear understanding.